Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bangam Langayate Girim Yakripatam Ham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanand Madhavam Shri Chaitanya. Hare Krishna. So we welcome you all for this fourth session of fifth trimester of Gita Mastery Course. Last session we have successfully completed chapter number 13. So there is no Gita Rewind today. We request you all to go to the website if you have not already done. The quiz is uploaded there. Kindly complete your quiz for chapter 13. And last week we also started the 14th chapter. We covered the first 4 verses. So we will begin from there about the 3 modes of material nature. So we saw in the previous session the first 4 verses. Krishna explains that I'm going to give you knowledge, O Arjuna, which is the best of all, because Krishna is going to reveal knowledge of the modes, which is very, very important. And Krishna says that if you know this knowledge, then you can attain a spiritual form. You can go back to the spiritual world. So that is what Krishna says. And then Krishna begins to explain, and what he says is that I am the seed-giving father, and I am the father of all living entities. And then he also explains and that the mother is Prakriti. So the seed or the soul is part and parcel of the Lord, and the body, the material body, is given by Prakriti. So this is what Krishna explains. And now we'll start from verse number 5. So this is a subsection from verses 5 to 9. We will see that how the different modes, we understand the meaning of modes. We have discussed many times. It is also called as guna in Sanskrit. And there is sattva-gun, rajogun, and tamogun. So these are the 3 gunas, the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And these modes, they bind us. They bind the soul tightly in this body. Sattvam rajastama iti guna prakriti sambhavaha nibadananti mahabaho
Dehi Dehi Namavyayam.
Material nature consists of three modes. So Krishna is saying Sattvam, Rajas and Tama. So the material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjun, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So Krishna is telling that, like as we were discussing about Aham Bij Pradapita, so he impregnate the mother and then the whole world is populated by this living entity, and these living entities, now Prakriti gives them the body and Jiva becomes affected or governed or controlled by these modes. So now these living entity, they are controlled by these three modes: goodness, passion and ignorance. So this is actually a manifestation of the material nature. These are the modes of material nature which keeps the Jiva bound or tied to the material world.
And this is just because the living entity is in complete ignorance of its divine origin. The Jiva is spirit, particle. It's a particle of consciousness, whereas the matter, the body, the matter it is made up of is actually dead. It is not alive. But because of this ignorance, it identifies with the body, and therefore he gets bound by these modes.
So there are these three types of modes: goodness, passion and ignorance. And here we see three different colors of glasses: yellow, red and blue. So it's like when we wear yellow glass, the whole world appears yellow. Everything we see, it's like in the shade of yellow. When we wear red glasses, everything becomes red and blue, then blue. So similarly, depending on which mode we are in, all our actions, our thoughts, everything is governed by these modes. The type of food we eat, the type of music we listen, the type of books we read, everything can be actually divided into these three categories of goodness, passion and ignorance. And depending on which mode we are predominantly in, that actually affects us completely. So this is how we acquire different bodies based on the different modes we are situated into.
So Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that these modes, they actually make up the psychological mindset. So somebody who's in the mode of goodness, his psychological mindset will more or less be of being happy. A person in passion, his psychological mindset that he's very active, super, he's always active. He does not want to be lazy, and he doesn't have time to be happy also. And the other, in mode of ignorance, the psychological mindset is of helplessness. The person is just, is not able to help himself. So of course, there's the question of helping others.
Every inhabitant of the material world has earned his prison sentence, and all are bound by the ropes of material nature. So every living entity who's in the material world, we all are bound by these ropes of material nature. We cannot blame Krishna any more than the criminal can blame judge for his jail sentence. So some of us are suffering in, let's say, in mode of ignorance. Some of us are situated in mode of ignorance, some in passion, some in goodness, some are happy, some are stressed out, and some are hopeless. And all this actually, it depends on us. We cannot blame Krishna that why did you give me this body? It is actually based on our karma that we have acquired these nature, and that is how we are suffering here. Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat prakasham anan.
We'll read again.
Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat prakashakam anamayam sukha sangena badnati jnana sangena
chanaga. O sinless one, Krishna is calling Arjuna Anagha, O sinless one. The mode of goodness, Tatra Sattvam, the mode of goodness being purer than the others, Nirmalatvat, is illuminating Prakasham, and it frees one from all sinful reactions, Anamayam. So these are all happens when one is situated in mode of goodness. It is illuminating and it frees us from all sinful reactions. Sukha sangena badnati, jnana sangena chanaga. So how does So mode of goodness sounds very good actually. Oh, it is illuminating. We gain knowledge, we become wiser, and we become free from sinful reactions. So it seems to be very good. Then what is the problem? Then Krishna explains in the last two sentences, statements, but mode of goodness, badnati, it ties us, it binds us with what? Sukha and jnana. Sukha sangena and jnana sangena. So it binds us with the sense of happiness and knowledge. So those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. So what has happened is that these people are in mode of goodness, a person situated in mode of goodness. Now it is purer than others. So the heart is cleaner than the person in passion or ignorance. So such a person tends not to commit sinful reactions. He also becomes freed from the reactions of the sinful activities done in the past. So, so therefore his miseries also reduce, and therefore he also becomes more peaceful, and therefore he has more happiness compared to all others in this material world. So these are the attributes of a person in mode of goodness. Now he feels, I'm happy. Actually, he can look around, he can see so much suffering is there, but he understands that he is actually better situated and he's more peaceful and happy than others. And he also, because the mode of goodness is prakasham, it reveals knowledge. So he also feels that, yeah, I'm actually more learned than others. So mode of goodness actually makes a person wiser compared to others. So bondage by the modes of goodness, so it is definitely purer than the three, than the purest of the three. It is illuminating. It frees one from all sinful reactions. But then we see this man in bright sunlight, but his legs are bound. He is bound by that sense of happiness and knowledge. So he feels that I have become more advanced in knowledge. I am better than others. And he feels that I am happier than others. So a good example of such people could be scholars or philosophers or scientists, people who are very learned in material education. Yeah, or in a more traditional sense, the Brahminical class. So they think that they know the Vedas and they are comparatively free from sinful habits. And, so they know that I have a lot of knowledge and, I'm pretty more happy. Also, I don't get disturbed by so many things which others are disturbed by. So this is what binds them. So we'll go to the Rajogun.
रजोरागात्मकं
विद्धि कृष्णसङ्गसमुद्भवं तन्निबध्नाति कौन्तेय कर्मसङ्गेन देहिनम्.
So now here Krishna is talking about a person who's born in mode of passion. So the mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longing. So two things are here, Trishna and Sangha. Trishna means he has a strong urge or craving to keep desiring things, that I want this and the next thing and the third thing and the fourth thing. So Trishna, so constant, uncontrollable or unlimited desires, and Sangha, which means that he longs for that. And when he gets that object, what he has been desiring, then he becomes attached to it. So unlimited desires and longing, O son of Kunti, and because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive actions. So karma sangena dehina. So what happens to a person in mode of passion? He has lots and lots and lots of desires, and whatever he acquires, he becomes so attached to these things, or he becomes so attached to his goal. He wants to attain certain material thing, and he becomes so attached to the idea, let's say an idea of going on a vacation, or an idea of a promotion, or an idea of a nice husband or a wife, whatever. So they have that desire and they become so attached to that desire. So all their life they are very active. Why? Because they're actively pursuing that desire. And then finally what happens is they are bound to the material fruits of action. So they act for the result and they become tied to that action. So this person in mode of passion, he has unlimited desire. Material desires force him to work hard. So harder and harder and harder. So this is his position. And this particular Rajogun, Prabhupada writes there in the purport that it is characterized by the attraction between man and woman. So that is the strongest attraction or the strongest way of sense gratification. So basically this person is running after sense gratification. To satisfy his senses, he does all his activities. So he is hankering for material enjoyment. Sometimes he wants some honor in the society. Sometimes he wants his nation to win. Sometimes he wants to be happy with family, children, whatever. But all these desires basically make him work hard. And because of working hard, he gets attached to the fruits. So like we heard that a person in mode of goodness, he is bound by the feeling of happiness and knowledge. Here, this person is tied to his desires and the result of his desires. So he is bound by material fruitive actions.
Tamastva ajnanajam vidhi mohanam sarvadehinam pramadalasya nidrabhis tannibhatnati bharata. O son of Bharat, know that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The result of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. So what has happened is tamastva ajnanajam vidhi. So the tamogun, it produces agyan or it produces ignorance, and that creates mohanam, sarvadehinam. So it creates that confusion. Such a person is in great confused state, and the characteristics are pramad. So this fellow is mad actually. He has symptoms of madness. He may have something in his hand and he may not know that it is in his hand. Things like that. He acts against logic. He acts against dharma. Mad person. And then indolence and sleep. So the person is very lazy and very, very difficult to push him out of bed. And for him to do any activity, he's very, very lazy and sleeps, long hours. So whenever you find, sometimes, you ask some students, what is your favorite activity? Sleeping. Right. So that characterizes the mode of ignorance. And these are the things that bind the conditioned soul. So that's how they are bound in this material world. So bondage of mode of ignorance, madness, cannot understand things as they are. Very difficult for them. They are so illusioned. Whatever happens, they are continuously degrading in their life. As they move on, as they progress in life, they are actually degrading. Instead of advancement, they're completely deluded. Prabhupada gives a very interesting example. He says that, all of us, we have known that our grandfather, in some cases, maybe grandfather is alive, but in some cases, we see that grandfather is not there. At least great grandfather is not there. Grandfather is not there. In some of our cases, father is also not there. They have passed away. And we also know that our children also in due course of time will pass away. And still, we have no concern for spirit soul. We are very reluctant to make any progress in spiritual life. We are not interested in spiritual life. So Prabhupada says that is actually madness. That when we see, like Yudhishthira Maharaj was asked this question by Yaksha, when he goes to fetch water because all his other 4 brothers are lying dead. So Yaksha is asking that if you answer my questions, all of them correctly, then whatever you say, I will do. Then you can fetch water from this pond. Otherwise, you will meet that destiny. And one of the questions that Yaksha asks is that, what is the most amazing thing in this material world? And Yudhishthira Maharaj says a similar point, that we see people dying everywhere. All around us, people are dying. Every day they are dying. But I think I will not die. And that is how that is shown. That is shown the way I work. I have no interest in spiritual life. I have only interest in increasing my sense gratification and arrangements for sense gratification. So that is actually madness. And even if there is some inspiration comes, but I'm so lazy to make any progress. Chanting one round is very difficult. Whole day I don't have time to chant even one round. Or I sleep so much. So such a people in mode of ignorance, influenced by Tamagun, they actually usually appear very dejected. Many times you will see that they are addicted to different kinds of intoxicants. Many, 7, 8, 10 cups of coffee, tea. They're addicted to smoking, tobacco, liquor, and even drugs. So this is the situation of people in mode of ignorance. So now we will look at the obstacles which are presented by different modes, whether it is goodness or passion or ignorance. So we'll start with obstacles presented by goodness.
So no impetus to take up spiritual life. Why they don't feel inspired? So the first reason is that they are too happy and satisfied to do what Krishna says. They are happy in their life, so they don't see any need to connect to spirituality because they feel I am good, I am happy. Things are nice in their life. That is one thing. Then second thing is because these people are not humble. Why they are not humble? Because they have so much of knowledge. So that knowledge brings to them the sense of superiority. They think that they know all. So if somebody knows all, then you cannot really teach him anything. So they know all from their angle. And that's why it's very hard for them to be humble. And why we are talking so much about humility is because we read in chapter 13, verse number 8 to 12, where Krishna is talking about the items of knowledge. So there is a great emphasis on humility there, that if I have to progress, the first quality itself is humility. So if I have to progress spiritually, I need to be humble. But these people, they find it very difficult to be humble, and that is why they do not really progress. And it is very hard for them to learn. And why is it so? I already know. So they are not humble, they already know, and they are quite satisfied in their life. So if they are not missing out on certain things, if they feel that everything I know and whatever I know is keeping me happy, so there is no reason for them to get promoted further. So this is why it is said that this knowledge and this happiness, that becomes binding for them. That does not allow them to rise above the modes of material nature.
And sometimes you will meet people who have, when you ask them, would you like to read Bhagavad Gita? No, I have read Bhagavad Gita. I have read many Upanishads. In fact, I have read Bible. I have read Quran. I have read, so I am aware of it. So, it's like, they have read, they have some knowledge, but, they're not able to penetrate and go beyond that to the level of understanding really what the scriptures are trying to say and
that is because they don't have that humility
to
accept and surrender. So reading is one thing, but surrendering is another. Let's see what are the obstacles presented by passion. So they cannot offer the results to Krishna. Now when we talk about devotional service, one needs to work for Krishna, but they are not able to offer results to Krishna. And why? Because they're too attached to what I have. I have unlimited desire, so whatever I get, it is less for me. Like if I have a flat, I want a bungalow. If I have a bungalow, I want a penthouse. If I have maybe, I don't know, what is next? They want a palace or something.
A villa floating on water.
Villa floating on water, yeah. So the desire is endless. So whatever money they get, so it is not that they don't make money, but whatever money they make, they don't think of parting off to giving certain portion in charity or doing something for Krishna, because their own desires are unlimited.
And sometimes for these people, see, when we give money to Krishna, what will happen? There will be no press coverage. Nobody will come and say, "Hey, this person donated this amount to the temple. He gave for Krishna's service." Nobody will do any coverage. Nobody will, devotees may glorify Prabhuji, very nice service. But otherwise, what is there? But if the same person goes and helps construct a hospital or helps construct some school or, gives or whatever. So then, a lot of name and fame will happen. Newspaper, his name will come. Sometimes TV news channels will come and cover. So there also, because there is some desire of his is being fulfilled, so he may do that kind of charity. But very difficult for him to offer his results to the Lord. So why he cannot do bhakti? So this is one problem with the Rajasic people, is that because they're driven by action, they're attached to action, and they're driven by those desires. So sometimes they don't really bother whether what I'm doing is legal or illegal. Sometimes I'm so amazed, people who are millionaires, people who are billionaires, we see economic offenses committed in India, thousands of crores. I mean, you already have so much money and still a person is committing crime for what? For few more crores or few hundred crores he is committing that crime. Like we have that Mehul Choksi, running away everywhere from this place to that place. So they have so much money, they're not satisfied. So, they always think, okay, I will, somehow manage the police, I'll somehow manage the legal system, I can do whatever I want to do. Some time back, I met one businessman. He was asking me, he knew that, I am serving the temple, I am a devotee, I teach Bhagavad Gita. So he was asking me, see, sometimes, I don't pay taxes. Sometimes I steal taxes from the government. Is that okay? I mean, that was a very strange question. The question, a normal, natural answer would be no. And still he was asking me that question. I said, yeah, it is no, that's not okay. So why? Because the person is so much attached. One of the qualities of mode of passion is greed. So they commit sin due to unlimited desire and strong attachments, and therefore they do not have sufficient determination for bhakti.
And then talking about the obstacle, what this mode of ignorance causes. So why this person who's in ignorance, why he can't do bhakti? So the reason being that they are too deluded to recognize Krishna's instructions. So as we have read that they are lazy, they are illusioned, and so they don't really know that what is right, what is wrong. They are unable to discriminate. They don't have that power or capability to discriminate because they are completely illusioned. And even if they get to know, even if they are informed, yet they are so lazy to perform any austerities.
Sorry.
So yet they are so lazy to perform any activity. They are so attached to their own body that they are too lazy to do anything. So here we are talking about goodness, passion, and ignorance. So we see that the people in mode of goodness, they follow dharma. Broadly, they try to do their occupational duties and they follow dharma.
Pious activities.
Pious activities, charitable demeanor. So that is how people in mode of goodness are. Those who are rajasic, they follow the dharma based on their convenience. So if it suits them, they would follow. If it falls in their series of like fulfilling their desires, basically. So if it comes in that way, then they would follow. Then those who are tamasic, they basically do all adharmic activity because they are so illusioned. So this is how goodness, passion, and ignorance is. And it causes bonding.
Sattvam sukhe sanjayati rajah karmani bharata jnanam avritya tu tamaha pramade sanjayati uta.
So here Krishna is summarizing the verse number 5 to 8, what he has already spoken. And what he says, O son of Bharat, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness. Passion conditions one to fruitive action. And ignorance, covering one's knowledge, binds one to madness. So goodness, passion, and ignorance, and what these people do, or what is it that holds them in this material world? Why they are not able to give up the binding to the material world? What is stopping them in realizing that they are part and parcel of Krishna? What is stopping them to perform devotional service? So goodness, because they get happiness in whatever they are doing, so they don't miss out on anything. Passion, because they want to act more and more because they want result. And ignorance, because they don't know. They don't know what is right and what is wrong, what is to be done and what is not to be done. And then they are so inattentive, illusioned, and they are in complete ignorance.
So just one example here, we can compare these three people of Satogun, Rajogun, Tamogun. All of us would have this experience that when we are at a rail crossing, so usually person in mode of goodness is that person who will go and stand in his lane. And then there is another person in goodness, he will come and stand behind him. And the third one also come and stand behind him. People in mode of passion, what they will do? they don't have patience to stand in that queue. They will go in the opposite lane, in the wrong lane, and they will try and go as close as possible to that, railway crossing, that what is it called, that boom barrier. And who's the person in mode of ignorance? The people in mode of ignorance are those who always do that, whether it is required or not required. Even if there is no traffic and person can go in their lane, but they will tend to go in the opposite direction, break the rules, and be on the wrong side of the law.
What is keeping me here are the modes. Understanding and accepting them will equip me to overcome and transcend. So that is why Krishna is explaining in so much of detail. We see here in chapter 14, and then again in 17 and 18, it will come back again. Especially in chapter 18, he would again describe in so much of detail so that we understand which mode we are in, we accept that, and we try to work in a way that we come or we transcend these modes of nature.
Just that example, I was talking about the railway crossing. So Rajogun is okay. Tamogun are those people who will take the vehicle below the boom barrier. Even if the train is coming, they'll say, let me quickly cross and let I'll try to miss the train somehow. Some of them get killed also that way.
So moving further, recognizing a mode supremacy, verse number 10 to 13.
Rajastamascha Sattvam bhavati bharata Rajah sattvam tamaschaiva Tamah sattvam rajastatha. Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance. O son of Bharat, sometimes the modes of passion defeat goodness and ignorance, and at other times, ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. So sometimes what happens is that goodness becomes prominent and passion and ignorance are weak. Sometimes passion defeats goodness and ignorance. So sometimes goodness and ignorance become weak and passion becomes prominent, and sometimes ignorance becomes prominent and goodness and passion become weak. So if we look at the ages, if we look at Satyuga, the beginning of the Yuga cycle, so that time the goodness was most prominent, ignorance was almost absent, and passion also was almost negligible. And then when we came to the Treta Yuga, then what happened? Passion started becoming more prominent. And when we come to Dwapar Yuga, ignorance began to gain some prominence, and in Kali Yuga, ignorance is the king. So it is like this Ferris wheel. Sometimes goodness is on the top, sometimes passion is on the top, sometimes ignorance is on the top.
So if one wants, he can develop by practice one of these three. Goodness, if we want, we can actually train ourselves in a manner that most of the time we are in goodness. I mean, it is in our hand. The choice is given to us, and that is the purpose why Krishna is explaining all these things, so that we understand that at least one should come at the mode of goodness, and then he can surpass goodness also.
Like how one can practice? Like all of us sleep 6, 7, 8 hours. So we have a choice that either we sleep from 10 to 4 or 5. And that is actually right time to sleep, because when we get up early morning. That is mode of goodness. Some people go to bed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the night. So if we change our sleep, if we change our food, if we change our habits, and we have everything aligned with mode of goodness, then naturally it will be big struggle in the beginning, but naturally we'll come to the mode of.
And if we wait attending classes till chapter 18, because Krishna will very categorically tell there that what is the food in mode of goodness, what is time in mode of goodness, what are other parameters in mode of charity, etc. He describes so many things. So if one is determined, he can be blessed by the mode of goodness, and by transcending the modes of goodness, he can be situated in pure goodness, which is called the Shuddha Sattva. So the whole point is that when we decide, we can actually become free of these bonds of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And if we cannot do that, then there is no point in reading Bhagavad Gita. If we cannot make any change in our lives, then what's the point? Then why do we read Bhagavad Gita? Then that way we can watch some TV, at least we'll have some entertainment. Right? So we are reading Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is giving so many important instructions because it is all practically possible. So to do that practically possible, we are coming up with this another course, Devotion in Action. So we have made some announcements related to this course. So this is coming shortly. And this particular course basically tells us how to practically live Bhagavad Gita. How do I put the things in our life? So like you can see the logo of this course, Diya, the bottom it is written, let's live Gita. So that is the motto of this course, that whatever we are studying in Bhagavad Gita, this goodness, passion, ignorance, how can be I most of the time in goodness, and how can I actually transcend goodness? How do I act when somebody is irritating me? I get angry. How do I control my anger? Or what do I do? How do I control my senses when my mind is forcing me to get something which I know is not favorable for my Krishna consciousness? So all such things and more would be answered here in Devotion in Action. We would really want you all to join this course.
So in this particular course, practically every challenge that you're facing, which is becoming an obstacle in your spiritual advancement and progress, will be discussed and will be sorted out.
So moving ahead, verse number 11 to 13, symptoms of each mode.
सर्वद्वारेषु देहेऽस्मिन् प्रकाश उपजायते ज्ञानं यदा तदा विद्यात् विवृद्धं सत्त्वमिति उता. The manifestation of the mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge. So now Krishna is talking about, in the previous verse we saw that sometimes goodness becomes prominent, sometimes passion becomes prominent, sometimes ignorance becomes prominent, and this is the discussion when goodness becomes prominent, the manifestation of mode of goodness. Then what happens is, can be experienced when the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge. So this means when there is experience or real awareness of things, the real awareness, the actual position of things, when we have that kind of awareness through the different doors of the body, when we are able to experience the scriptures in our daily life, like we are saying, sleep early, get up early, and that will bring about changes in our behavior. Imagine, just by sleeping early and getting up early will bring change in our behavior, in our thought process. So this is what happens. So we begin to see things in the right position, we begin to hear things in the right way, we begin to taste things in the right way. So basically, this is a person who follows the scriptural rules, and then he begins to experience that through the different gates of the body. So that is, then one can know that, oh, this person is actually in mode of goodness. Lobha pravrittirarambha karmanam spruha rajasi etani jayante vivriddhe bharatarashabha.
O chief of the Bharatas, when there is an increase in the mode of passion, the symptom of great attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develop. So now here Krishna is talking about the time when mode of passion is predominant, when my life is led by mode of passion, when all the actions are governed by mode of passion, then what is my mindset and how do I act, or how do I identify that passion is leading my body? So I have this greed to have more and more and more and more and more, when actually more is less for me. So whatever I have, it is always less for me. And I am absorbed in the activities to acquire more. And then what Krishna says here is intense endeavor or intense effort. So maybe it is not comfortable for me, but I am pushing myself. Like for example, let's say I want a farmhouse. So I start working harder because that requires a lot of money. I work harder and harder, and I am spending money in making a nice farmhouse where I get to spend probably
Who lives? The
Yeah,
watchman.
that's what I'm saying. Where I get to spend time maybe once a week or once a month, where I just go for a couple of days, and my whole life, at least like 20, 30 years of my life is governed by gathering money to make that farmhouse, and I don't even get to stay there. So there is a guard who stays there, there is this watchman who's enjoying the cool breeze next to the ocean. I construct this farmhouse, and I hardly have time to go there. Why? Because I am doing intense endeavor. Why? Because I have uncontrollable desire. I want that, though I don't have time to enjoy that, and yet I want that. So these are the qualities of a person in mode of passion. He is never satisfied with whatever life offers. So whatever position you get, and then you want more and more and more. So great hankering for one or the other form of sense gratification. Aprakasho pravrittischa pramado moha evacha tamasi etani jayante vivridhe kuru nandana.
If we look at the first word itself, it says aprakasho. So from this itself, we can understand that it is opposite of satogun, because satogun, the word uses prakash. Here it is aprakash. So here we're going to talk about mode of ignorance. Tamasi etani jayante. When there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, O son of Kuru, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifest. So these people are aprakasha. They are in darkness, they are in ignorance, they do not have discrimination. They do not know what is right and what is wrong. In mode of passion, they know what is right, what is wrong, but because they have so much greed that they don't mind. They use convenience. Whatever, if wrong is convenient, they will do wrong. But in mode of ignorance, they do not know what is right and what is wrong. So they don't have that sense of discrimination. Like we see that in modern times, health is so important that how you maintain health, people don't care. So doctors recommend that you eat meat, and one should eat different kinds of meat for different kinds of nutrition. So although if you look at scriptures, it is forbidden food, right? But many times doctors and sometimes families, they in their families they practice eating different kinds of meat for different kinds of nutrition. So for them, it is completely darkness, right? They think that is they're doing the right thing, so they do not have that kind of a discrimination. They do not follow the regulative principles. Then next is inertia. No, make no endeavor. I should do it today. Yeah, I will do it tomorrow. Tomorrow, next week. And then that time never comes for that act to happen. And then madness. He wants to act whimsically for no purpose. So he just acts on whims. I feel like it, I will do, right?
Just do it.
Just do it. If you feel like it, just do. And then illusion. So they are so much absorbed in wrong or falsity. So that is what they're absorbed in. So these are the qualities that manifest of a person who's in mode of ignorance. So the symptoms of the three modes: goodness means knowledge, ignorance was absence of knowledge. Yeah. Absence of knowledge. Passion means uncontrolled desire, ignorance is inertia, madness, and illusion. Goodness, and I said passion, I said ignorance.
Okay.
Goodness, knowledge, ignorance, lack of knowledge, ignorance, yeah.
So getting into the next section, acting and dying within the modes.
Yada sattve pravaddetu pralayam yati dehabhrit tatottama vidam lokan amalan pratipadyate rajasi pralayam gatva karma sangishu jayate tatha pralinastamasi murayoneshu jayate.
So these two verses are actually talking about the destination of a person who dies in goodness, in passion, and in ignorance. And what happens after death? So one who dies in the mode of goodness, he attains to the pure higher planet of the great sages. So because he is already situated in goodness, so he goes to the place which is probably the purest in the material world. to the higher planets, which are much purer than Earth also, because he has this element of purity. Goodness actually reflects purity. So this person has purity, and that is why he goes to the highest planet in this material world. But he's still in this material world. Why is he still in this material world? Because he's conditioned, or he's tied by happiness and knowledge. When one dies in the mode of passion, he takes birth among those engaged in fruitive activities, which means he comes back. He comes back to the earthly kingdom. He comes back as a human being, and he performs fruitive activity. So fruitive activity means activity for some fruit,
Material gain.
for some result. So that fruit is attached. So they act because they want something in return. So that is fruitive activity. And when one dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom. So now there is this another misconception that once human, always human. So it's not like that. So even after coming to the human platform, but if I'm living my life as an animal, then what happens? I glide down to lower species of life, get into animal kingdom.
You remember last session we were discussing about obituaries, and in obituaries we usually write attained heaven.
Swargavas.
Swargavas. Yeah, the word used in North India is Swargavas. The person has gone where? To heavenly planets. Are Baba, it depends on what mode is he in. If he's in mode of goodness, then only will go to heavenly planet. Just by writing an obituary, it will not happen. So death in the modes, a person in mode of goodness go to higher planets like Brahma Loka, Jana Loka, Tapa Loka, and even heavenly planets, Swarg Loka also, person in mode of goodness, they go there. So all the Devatas, Brahmaji, the sages, all of them are in mode of goodness. Of course, their degree of goodness may vary, but they are all predominantly in mode of goodness. We saw in earlier verse where one mode is prominent. So in higher planets, mode of goodness is prominent. And then what about people dying in mode of passion? They take birth in earthly plane, like a human being engaged in human activities. And in ignorance, they slide down to animal kingdom, in animal life. That's in deep ignorance. Or even the hellish lower planetary systems, the life forms in lower planetary systems. Karmana sukritasyahu satvikam nirmalam phalam rajasastu phalam dukkham ajnanam tamasa phalam.
The result. So now it is a very simple and straightforward verse. If we read second, third, and fourth line. So second line says Satvikam Nirmalam Phalam. So when a person is in mode of goodness or Satvikam, what is the phal? What is the result? Nirmalam, or pure. So the result of pious action is pure and is said to be in mode of goodness. But action done in mode of passion, Rajasas. So Rajasas tu phalam dukkham. So action performed in passion, and it results in misery. Why does a person become miserable in passion? Because he's so attached to the result. So he may not get the result, or the result may not be as per his desire. So that position is very frustrating. So then he feels miserable. So Rajasas tu phalam dukkham. Ajnanam tamasaha phalam. Action performed in the mode of ignorance result in foolishness.
Tattva sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobha evacha pramada mohau tamaso bhavato jnanam evacha urdhvam gachanti sattvastha madhye tishtanti rajasaha jaganya guna vrittistha adho gachanti tamasaha. From the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. From mode of passion, greed develops. And from the mode of ignorance, develop foolishness, madness, and illusion. So here, sattvat sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobha evacha pramada mohau tamaso. So here the qualities which are produced by different modes are mentioned. So this, so again, the whole section is being concluded by Krishna. So he's explaining it again that mode of goodness gives rise to knowledge, passion gives rise to greed, ignorance gives rise to foolishness, madness, and illusion. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upwards to the higher planets. They go to the higher planets. In the mode of passion, they live on earthly planets, and those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. Or like we have Sutala, Patal Lok, so many lokas are there below earth, earthly plane, so they go to those worlds. So both, they may go into the animal form, or they may go to the lower planetary systems.
So here is the summary of all what we read today. So working of the three modes. So first we will see goodness. So what is the binding force, or why these people in mode of goodness are bound, or they are not able to escape the material condition, is because they are bound by the sense of happiness, satisfaction, knowledge, and superiority. They have this feeling of superiority, that they know the best. They are very happy and satisfied in their existence, and they feel that they are all knowledgeable.
And then the symptoms are discussed in these 4 verses, that mode of goodness, it illuminates the gates of the body with knowledge. That's how we know that I am in goodness or somebody else is in goodness. Like for example, we have a real perception of the reality. Actually, we can perceive, we have a real perception of reality. And frees one from sinful reaction. So that is another symptom of person mode of goodness.
Then what is the destination of a person who dies in mode of goodness? So he attains pure highest planets of the sages.
And then what is the result of his action? The result is pure knowledge and ascending the higher planets.
Talking about passion. So what is the binding force for passion? So the people who are working in mode of passion, one, they are attached to fruitive activities. Second, they have unlimited desires, and they have attachment. So that is why they keep coming back to this material world, because they have so many unfulfilled desires, basically.
So what are the symptoms? What we discussed just now, the binding force. So they have unlimited desires. They are very, very attached to what they have. And basically, their symptoms are they're very hardworking. They are always engaged in doing something. So for fulfilling some of their dreams and desires.
And then the destination, what they attain at death, is generally they come back to earthly planets, they get human bodies, and they continue their pursuit to fulfill their unfulfilled desires.
And result of a person in mode of passion is dukkham. That is what Krishna said, misery or sorrow. So ultimately these people will attain sorrow. They have greed and they are situated in earthly planet.
Talking about people in mode of ignorance, so what is the binding force is madness, laziness, and sleep. They are too lazy to spirituality. They are too illusioned to spirituality, and their favorite activity is sleep.
So symptoms: illusioned, darkness, they do not have the knowledge, they are not able to discriminate. Madness, they act whimsically, suddenly they will act in different way. And inertia, they are just so lazy, so they don't want to act at all.
And the destination, so they take birth in lower species, they glide down to the lower species of life, or they end up into hellish existence.
So what are the result of action in mode of ignorance? Foolishness, madness, illusion, and life in hellish worlds.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we have studied today a very interesting chapter which has a lot of practical application, and it is very simple also. If we are a little cognizant of our surroundings, it makes so much of sense. So here at the end of this section, I would like you all to do an assignment. Take up a paper and a pen and write down the qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance, and try to identify one person from your lives.
Our own self-assessment difficult. If you are in ignorance, it's very difficult.
Okay, you want to give the other assignment? I mean, that was my assignment. You want something else?
I mean, I'm saying that we should first assess ourselves before we start assessing others. We should first assess ourselves and find out, what are we, what level are we in. So, if you are in ignorance, you may not be attending the course actually. So then assessment will become very difficult. But even if you are in passion, definitely you can make out by observing your activities, what describes you best. So self-assessment is important. But then, yeah, Sukhi, your assignment, please.
It's just that if you can figure out, if you can identify people in these three modes and write down their characteristics and then see where do they fit in, which characteristic is fitting in where, because we also saw that these goodness, passion and ignorance, it keep competing with each other, and sometimes we are dominated by goodness, sometimes passion and sometimes ignorance. So which activity is mostly in goodness, which activity I am doing in passion and which in ignorance? So like that, if we can do some detailed analysis, that would be really helpful, and keep that sheet safe, because when we do chapter 18, then there'll be a lot of other characteristics which Krishna would talk about, and we can add to the same list. So thank you very much. We are ending the session a little early, probably a couple of minutes before time. And for the next session, the reading assignment is chapter 14 till the end, and chapter 15, the first 4 verses.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Bhagavad Gita as it is, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande.